Well, for more on how both runway shows and the business of fashion are playing out across the world's fashion hubs, I have with me now Joshua T. Williams. He's assistant professor of the Parsons School of Design and also the president of Fashion Consort. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So how did this season's approach work out, in your opinion?
Well, I think we're largely waiting to see sort of how the dust settles, but I think this has been a chance for fashion companies to really try out new things and to try things that they've already been doing, but in a much bigger way. And we saw that whether it was through digital shows or a hybrid approach where they had some sort of a physical show with a digital video that was attached to it. So this, I think, really is just the test. This is everyone's trying their best to see what they can do and hoping that they'll get some feedback so that they can plan for the next season.
So then, given what people have seen with New York Fashion Week, what do we know about how upcoming shows, London, Paris, Milan, what do we know about what they'll look like, especially as coronavirus infections are spiking in Europe?
That's absolutely true. And I think that everyone's sort of watching to see what happens in Paris in particular as the cases rise. It's a lot like New York. I think people are going to try to do some physical shows. I've heard word from some designers that they are going to go forward with that. They're going to try to stand out. I've heard that one designer is planning to do the show atop the Tour de Montparnasse. But I think most designers are really trying to think about it digitally and how to really connect more authentically with their consumer.
Now, I want to look at Congolese fashion designer Anifa Mwemba, who made a huge splash last season with her show. Why did her approach make such a splash?
Well, there were two things about it. One, it was fully digital, so there weren't models. They were actually the clothes walking down the runway without necessarily real models, and in some cases, avatars. And there's a real movement happening in fashion using technology such as Clo 3D that allows you to create avatar models. And you can stage your own fashion show right in a digital space. I think that's number one. Number two, she really talked about the issues of Congo in her show, and she used this fashion show as a way to talk about the issues of the environment in Congo. And I think that really resonates with the Gen X and millennials, these sort of value-based fashion companies that are thinking bigger than just the clothes.
So when you think of the values and you add in, as you mentioned, things like digital models, what do some of these shifts mean for this movement away from traditional fashion weeks for models, talent agencies, and of course the buyers?
Right. It's a whole complex industry. And I think that's partly why it's been so slow to change, is because there's so many moving parts. I think that this will change things. I think it's accelerated the change that was already happening. Clearly, brands for the first time are trying out these avatar models in the digital fashion show because they have no choice in some cases. What I do think will happen is we'll start to see a bit of a hybrid happening between the physical and the digital. I don't think physical will go completely away.
Now, is the pandemic creating greater opportunity for up-and-coming designers, or can really the bigger houses, is this their time to shine?
It's both. It's very difficult right now because you have to. It's hard because the customers change; they're stuck at home. So for a young brand that might not have a lot of financial capacity, it's very difficult. But on the other hand, people are looking for something different. They're again stuck at their homes, looking for something unique. The bigger brands, I think, they're in some cases in their own way. They're sort of stuck in the past, wanting to do the big traditional shows and having the collections, but also realizing that times are changing and that they need to figure out a way to connect the two, their heritage and the future.
And speaking of being stuck at home, we saw that Christian Siriano used his backyard as the backdrop, yet it was still his most expensive show yet. What are some examples of some of these viral shows, and what are they doing to stand out?
Well, I think, you had Valentino with their amazing video that went viral on Instagram. It was just very beautiful and sort of ethereal and really captured people's attention. You had companies such as Burberry that was mentioned before this, really kind of rethinking what a show could look like and how to engage. I think that's another key part here, is that the fashion show was always for the press. It was a press event. It also allowed for buyers to come and to check out the new collections. But over the past 15, 20 years, it's become a consumer event where all of us are watching. We're seeing live streams, even if it was a physical show, and wanting to buy that thing that's on the runway. So what that means is that brands now have to think about the end consumer, not just the buyer or the press. They really have to think about myself, and maybe I will see the show and want to be able to go and buy that immediately if possible.
Now, we've seen that the practice of some of these highly produced live fashion shows was essentially at a crossroads even before the pandemic for a few reasons, including environmental concerns, a lot of issues about waste. Talk about that and any other reasons that some of these productions may have already been falling out of grace.
Sure. As I said, I think, again, Fashion Week was very much about the press. And as it's kind of morphed into something that's more about the consumer and engaging with the consumer, this has really changed things. One, consumers nowadays are looking for something that's authentic. And a big fashion show with a big production doesn't necessarily signal that anymore. On the other hand, it is an opportunity to be very artistic. And I think that is one thing that we lose a bit from the physical fashion shows. So brands will have to kind of look for new ways to do that. And I think digital shows, videos, 3D, AR, VR, these are all things that brands are now wrestling with, looking at, trying, and trying to determine if it's a good fit for their brand.